You are now tuned in to the newest Bills Mafia production, FAMbase Sports. Join Jarek Hall and Kari Demos as they take you around the world of sports every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on the official network of the original Bills Mafia.
What is going on, ladies? Let me fix that. There we go. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jarek Hall, and welcome back to FAMbase Sports. And we are back here again to talk about NFL power rankings. We're also going to recap NBA conference championship recaps. And if we can sneak in a couple things as well, we can also go the college route as well. But yeah, my name is Jarek Hall. My co-host Kari Damos cannot be here tonight, or maybe he can show up a little bit later. But if he doesn't, obviously he's got some personal things that he's got to handle. But for sure, we will be back next week, the both of us, and we will talk some sports because there's a lot of things I want to talk with him about it. As far as sports topics, power rankings, college recruiting, high school sports, all that type of jazz. So if you guys like it, you want to make sure to subscribe to FAMbase Sports because we have it all for you. We will talk everything about sports. And even today, I might even add a little bit of Liverpool talk with you guys today. Obviously, Bills chatter right here. And is looking at the comic session. Shout out to my boy, Nabil. What's going on? Glad to have you back. You were phenomenal last time, so glad to have you back. Of course, Jerry, thank you so much for stopping by. And any others. Especially if you're coming from the Gent Sports channel. Thank you so much for a lot of you guys that are going to be supporting for FAMbase Sports. But now let's hop straight into it. We're going to talk NFL power rankings. So with number 10, right, got the New Orleans Saints. They are my number 10 team. And a lot of people are going to be surprised that I have the New Orleans Saints at number 10. But the biggest reason why I have the Saints at number 10 was because imagine this, guys. You're talking about a depleted team, a team that was just absolutely just barren by injuries. Then you have to also add into the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that you had coach situations, quarterback situationally wise, they were pretty much depleted there as well. They literally had to rotate 3 guys at the quarterback position. And that team, with all the depletions, whether it was from the offensive line, whether if it was from the defensive side of the ball, these guys still were able to finish 9-8. So the fact that a lot of people are kind of forgetting them, I think is kind of ridiculous. They're in a division which is a little bit easier. Yes, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, Tom Brady is not going away. Yes, Bills fans, he's not going away. However, the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Saints are still a top team, especially in that division. And this is not the AFC where quarterbacks are just ruling that conference. This is a conference, ladies and gentlemen, that for the most part, it's not really quarterback friendly. I mean, you have like maybe around 4 to 5 elite quarterbacks in that conference, and I might just be pushing that. The fact of the matter is that the Saints have one of the deepest rosters. They have one of the deepest teams, and the New Orleans Saints, I just believe that they could be. Now, there are some question marks to them. Is number one, quarterback. Can Jameis Winston stay healthy, and can he pull it off? I mean, when Jameis Winston was healthy, he was decent. Right, he completed close to 70%, if not maybe touched the 70% mark. Yes, he wasn't throwing for 300, 400 yards, but maybe that's a good thing because he's also not throwing for 30. He's also not throwing for 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in the same season, and then proclaiming that he's the best quarterback in the National Football League. So I think, learning from Drew Brees definitely helped him a lot. And I think overall wise, looking at the weapons with Michael Thomas, with Chris Olave. Then you have to add in Jarvis Landry, who you can line him up in the slot, so you can push Chris Olave. Whether if you want to line him up in the slot or if you want to push him out wide, that's up to them. But you have so many different options now at the receiving position with Alvin Kamara, who you can also slide. Well, we all know Alvin Kamara is one of the best complete backs in the National Football League. You look at the offensive line with Andreas Pete. You look at the offense, Andreas Pete. You look at Ryan Ranchick. Adding some other key pieces to the offensive line that were not there because they were depleted with injuries as well. And then the defensive side of the ball with Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, Cameron Jordan, Marcus Davenport. Again, wasn't the healthiest player in the world, but we all know if he's healthy, he's an 8-9 sack type of guy. I like the New Orleans Saints. I think they're deep when it comes to their secondary. They have one of the deepest safeties combinations. Yes, they lose Marcus Williams, but you have Marcus May from the New York Jets, and then PJ Williams if you don't really feel comfortable with him. So overall wise, guys, I like the New Orleans Saints. I think they could be a huge key contributor And I think overall wise, if they can just fix even then, if Jameis Winston could just stay healthy, because again, that quarterback position was so depleted. I think this team is going to be a really, really good team. And not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I definitely believe that this is going to be a playoff contender and a team that can easily win 10 to 11 games. Coming in at number 9 for me, looking at the list, was the Indianapolis Colts. The biggest reason why was because I think Matt Ryan is an upgrade from Carson Wentz. Some people may say, well, he's too old. He's not that good of a quarterback anymore. He doesn't have the athleticism. He doesn't really have the physical intangibles to play the quarterback position at a high level anymore. Well, that kind of begs to differ, because I look at a guy like Phillip Rivers, who very similar age to Matt Ryan, was a guy who you easily slid in there back in 2020, and they made the playoffs. As a matter of fact, that was an 11-win football team that almost beat my Buffalo Bills and a lot of people's, because this is FAMbase Sports, the Buffalo Bills, they almost beat them at home. So the fact of the matter is, guys, is that the offensive line is going to be absolutely spectacular, right? It's going to be absolutely spectacular, led by Quentin Nelson and the rest of those guys on the offensive line. Jonathan Taylor is one of the most complete running backs in the National Football League, who you can use on the ground and throughout, and you can use him in the flat in the receiving game. He's a complete back, and that's a guy that, if he stays healthy, can easily be a 14, at least 1,300 to 1,400 yard rushing back in the National Football League. The receivers wise, they have some decent receiving options at the receiving position. Again, you got Michael Pittman. I believe T.Y. Hilton is still there as well. So they got some decent options at the receiving position, but it will not be the strongest suit for the Indianapolis Colts. However, when you have a quarterback in Matt Ryan, who's pretty much had to go through thick and thin. I mean, he's been through a lot with the Falcons organization. I do believe that Matt Ryan is going to be fine. It is going to be a much needed upgrade for Matt Ryan's career, playing with a really, really fine organization like the Colts. And then I think their defense is settled too, right? You look at guys, like, for the most part, like DeForest Buckner. You look at Darius Leonard, who arguably is the best inside linebacker in the National Football League. The Colts, they're a dangerous team, right? They're a dangerous team, and they're competing in AFC South Division with Jacksonville and Houston. I think really the only competitive team there is going to be the Tennessee Titans. But I do believe that the quarterback position is going to be an upgrade. I look at, I think head to toe wise, I think the Titans and Colts are two even teams. However, I think what pushes Indianapolis is I just believe they just have a better defense. I think they have a more complete roster, a little bit more of a more complete roster than the Tennessee Titans. And that's the reason why I got the Colts edging out them. Tennessee is not going to be my top 10 power rankings, and I have the Indianapolis Colts at number 9. At number 8 for me is going to be the Denver Broncos. Now, listen, guys, the Denver Broncos, one of the most underrated football teams. There is no excuse how the Denver Broncos was not able to make the playoffs over the last couple of years, besides the quarterback position. Drew Lock, my God, man, Drew Lock just could not get the job done. Obviously, with Teddy Bridgewater being there, he was efficient, but he just couldn't really get the job done for them because, again, 150 yards, 170 yards, 200 yards, being extra conservative, really relying on intermediate throws and not really relying too much on the deep ball was just not going to do it for the Broncos. But when you really take a look at their roster, it is arguably one of the most complete rosters in the National Football League. I mean, when you look at the Denver Broncos, look at Javonte Williams at the rushing attack with Melvin Gordon. That's arguably one of the best rushing duos, top 5 rushing duos in the National Football League, right? You look at a guy like Melvin Gordon, a big back at 220 pounds. Even though he's pushing the age of 30, he still is very, very elusive. He's a hard dude to take down. He still has the speed down the field to break away for those home runs. And then with Javonte Williams, you're talking about a combination of just power and power, quick feet and elusiveness. That's one of the best rushing attacks in the National Football League. And then you look at the offensive line led by a guy like in Lloyd Cushenberry, who has taken a massive step. Lloyd Cushenberry has taken a massive step, being from LSU, coming to the NFL. The offensive line is going to be experienced. I think they're going to have around 3 to 4 starters on the offensive line. You add in Russell Wilson, a franchise quarterback, arguably a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League. And then with Tim Fitzpatrick, Jerry Jeudy. And then you also add in Sutton, who got hurt. Sutton tore his ACL last year, but when Sutton is healthy, that is easily a 1,000-yard receiver. I mean, Denver has all the tools, man. I mean, Denver, for the most part, these guys, for the most part, they have the tools. I mean, you add in, looking at the list, you add in Randy Gregory. You add in, Bradley Chubb is a player that needs to stay healthy, but when he's healthy, Bradley Chubb is a dominant player in this league. He's just got to stay healthy. But the Broncos had one of the top defenses in the National Football League. They, again, a team that once again was kind of depleted with a little bit of the injuries, but for the most part, what held the Denver Broncos back was number one, the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Chargers, and of course the Las Vegas Raiders, but of course the quarterback position. The AFC West is clearly a division that needs quarterbacks, that needs to focus on quarterback play. And if you have that, I think you can go a long ways. I think when you look at the Denver Broncos, based off of from what we saw last season, it is a football team that is not just reliant on their offensive firepower like we saw from the three teams I just mentioned before, but they also have that combination of great defense, of a legitimate elite top 10 defense. And I think the Denver Broncos could be a dark horse Super Bowl contender. So Denver Broncos for me are number 8. I don't think they're being talked that much about it. So for me, Denver Broncos is the number 8. Number 7 for me is the next team in the AFC West division, and that is the LA Chargers. Now, the LA Chargers, there's no question about it. You know, you look at Justin Herbert, you look at you look at Keenan Allen, you look at for the most part Michael Williams, Austin Eckler. No question about it when it comes to that. But then you look at the defensive side of the ball. You look at Joey Bosa, who's been one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League. Khalil Mack, shout out to the University of Buffalo. Khalil Mack is an absolute terror, and I just felt bad for Khalil Mack over the last 2 to 3 years. Ever since the 2018 season, where Khalil Mack has just kind of been, in a way, just kind of wasting his career. His career was just being rotted away, being with the Chicago Bears. But now you put him in a legitimate defense with Joey Bosa. Unbelievable what it could be done when you talk about that front line. And Jeffrey Tillery made a huge step. Jeffrey Tillery had a huge step throughout his career. So that's also some exciting news looking at the LA Chargers. But, then, guys, you look at Derwin James. You add in the addition with J.C. Jackson at the outside cornerback position. But Derwin James, a guy who is very similar to Minkah Fitzpatrick, Tyrann Mathieu, and, you can also kind of put in Jamal Adams. That's a guy that you can use in the box. He's one of the best pass rushers from the safety position in the National Football League. Underrated in zone coverage, really tremendously well in man coverage where he can guard slot receivers and big tight ends from the slot position. But you can slide him in as an inside or an outside linebacker. He's a more in the box guy. Derwin James is an absolute menace. The problem with Derwin James throughout his career has been injury-related issues. And again, if he can continue to stay healthy, continue to progress through his career, that's a top 3 safety in this league. And now with J.C. Jackson, the addition of him as an outside corner, there's a reason why the Chargers in some power rankings, they have them in the top 5. Also with the improvements with the offensive line, with adding in Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson from the NFL draft. The Chargers are, again, they're doing something that a lot of NFL teams, and including, I will say this, college teams just can't do. And that's just invest in their quarterback, and not just the skill position players, but it all starts with the offensive line. Yes, I'm talking to you, Jacksonville Jaguars. The fact that you guys just could not invest in your quarterback is it's just asinine. It's just absolutely ridiculous why you just could not, invest in the offensive line that much. But the Chargers have been doing that, and if they can do that, there's no question in my mind that the Chargers can be a Super Bowl contender. Number 6 on my list is the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, Buffalo Bills fans, I know some of you guys are not going to be excited about this, but yes, we got to put them on this list. We got to put them on this list. And a big reason why we have to put them on this list is simply because of this. When you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, when you look at Patrick Mahomes, when you look at Tyreek Hill, when you look at, I'm sorry, not Tyreek Hill, but when you look at Travis Kelce, and then with Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster, and now you add Scantling, who's a decent outside number 2 receiver, man, oh man, the sky is the limit. The sky is the absolute limit when you have those guys there. But my goodness gracious, there is no question in my mind, guys, that the Kansas City Chiefs is one of the best teams in the National Football League. Listen, they improved their defense with adding in George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, all these different types of guys on the defensive side of the ball. You look at Justin Reid, who's a direct replacement, who I don't think is going to be as good as Tyrann Mathieu. And by the way, I forgot to even mention Tyrann Mathieu for the New Orleans Saints, but he's up there. He's absolutely up there. Oh, my goodness gracious. Yes, I don't want to say it. Kansas City is a top contender. They are a championship contender, and they are a thorn in the Bills' side. But with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and all those weapons that Kansas City has, even with the loss of Tyreek Hill, there's no questioning in my mind. that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be one of the top contenders. But taking a little break, we're going to look at the comic session. Again, shout out to my boy, shout out to Nabil, shout out to Jerry, Andrew Martin's in the building, Crimson Brave from the Giant Sports. Shout out to Alabama Crimson Tide, Roll Tide. Absolutely, absolutely. But like I say, ladies and gentlemen, Kansas City, yes, they're going to be a thorn in our side. But yeah, shout out to Crimson Brave, Giant Sports coming from that side, which, by the way, thanks a lot, again, for a lot of you guys that are going to be coming from the Giant Sports side. I appreciate you guys so much for stopping by here and showing Buffalo FAMbase Sports a lot of love. But getting now back to the list, number 5 for me, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. And I always imagine what would happen if Buffalo played the Cincinnati Bengals. And a lot of Bills fans would sit up here and say that it would have been an automatic loss for the Cincinnati Bengals if Buffalo would have won the game. Because let's be honest here, Buffalo had home field advantage. It would have been the first time we hosted a conference championship since literally the early 90s. And with the momentum, with Buffalo finally getting Kansas City that thorn off their back, Josh Allen arriving to be an elite quarterback, Buffalo having at that time the number 1 defense in the league, a lot of people thought that the Cincinnati Bengals was going to absolutely get stomped by Buffalo, and Buffalo was going to get an easy, at least, Super Bowl appearance. I'm not too sure about that. Even now, thinking about it, I'm just not too sure if Buffalo would have won that game because we did not have Tre'Davious White. Our outside corners were decent, but I mean, really, Dane Jackson, Cam Lewis. Then you had to worry about Jamar Chase, who no one can cover. No one. If Jalen Ramsey was getting torched, who was the best quarterback in football, if he was getting torched all championship game long, how do you think Dane Jackson and Cam Lewis would have handled a player like Jamar Chase? Then there's Tyler Boyd from the slot. Then there's T. Higgins. And then you have Joe Mixon. The only thing that Buffalo could have had an advantage on was the fact that they would have sacked Joe Burrow at least 5 to 6 times. But even then, the Cincinnati Bengals have proven to being a championship contender, even without having an offensive line. Now the Bengals have improved the offensive line by adding in a player like L.O. Collins at right tackle. You're going to have former Alabama great Jonah Williams at left tackle. You have Alex Kappa who can slide in at guard. You're making that offensive line better. I mean, it went from being the worst line in the league to now having one of the best lines in the league on paper with Joe Mixon in the running game. It's a blend of great pass protection, great run blocking. I love that Bengals offensive line. And now you add in those weapons. Man, oh man, oh man, it's hard it's hard, honestly, for me not to put Cincinnati at number 2 and number 1. I mean, if that team with no line can make it to a Super Bowl, how in the absolute hell do you expect Cincinnati not to even get back to that point? And they improved on the offensive line. Yes, you can sit up here and say, well, Baltimore is improved. Yes, you can sit up here and say, well, Cleveland has Deshaun Watson if Deshaun Watson will play. Pittsburgh obviously has one of the nastiest defenses and one of the most talented rosters, but they have questions at the quarterback position. This could be an easy divisional win for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, Cincinnati is a dangerous opponent. You look at their defense with Sam Hubbard. You look at a guy like Jesse Bates at safety. We'll take a look at some of the other key players. Eli Apple, listen, I know Eli Apple, that's no concern, but I think Cam Taylor-Britt is going to absolutely steal the show right there. But then you add in a guy, again, Hayden Hurst at tight end, the athletic, again, and he's no CJ Uzomah, right? He's no CJ Uzomah, but he still has the athleticism to play the position. He's easily a 500 to 600 yard receiver, and I do believe he could be a big contributor for them in the postseason. But then you add Trey Hendrickson, a former New Orleans Saint, but a double-digit. I mean, that's a guy that if he can stay healthy, that's a double-digit sack guy. There's no question in my mind, ladies and gentlemen, that Trey Hendrickson is going to be an absolute stud again for them. And now you add in a player like, again, Logan Wilson, who was a big contributor for them at the outside linebacker slot, who was the captain of that defense. Guys, the Cincinnati Bengals could be a dangerous opponent. The only question marks I have is outside corner, but even then they have some steady veteran presences, some former starters. No Eli Apple. I think Cameron Taylor-Britt could be a player that could be a contributor right away. But guys, the key thing here, guys, is that they improved the offensive line. And I think that was just the question mark for the Cincinnati Bengals. Can they improve their offensive line? And that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did, ladies and gentlemen. So the Cincinnati Bengals for me is number 5. But now we're going to go into the top 4, and number 4 for me is the Baltimore Ravens. Biggest reason why I had the Baltimore Ravens at number 4 is because, listen, they are a regular season football team. That's a football team, ladies and gentlemen, it's key for them in the regular season. There's no question in my mind that they're just absolutely star-studded in the regular season. Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. You have an improved offensive line with Orlando Brown. You look at Orlando Brown. You look at, Kevin Zeidler on the offensive line. A lot of key additions. Receiving position is the only question mark I have because, Devin Duvernay you can use in the slot. Tylan Wallace is a backup, but for the most part, he's a good talent. And then obviously Rashad Bateman, who they drafted in the first round, they're hoping he can step up and be the number 1 target for Marquise Brown. But, even if the receivers, none of those guys even pan out, you have a player like Mark Andrews, who's a very, very good receiving prospect. He's arguably the best tight end, right now in football. And, so you got Mark Andrews to rely upon. You got other okay, I'm not even going to say decent, but okay receivers, talented players, but okay players. It's just, man, I feel you got to feel bad for Lamar Jackson because you look at the defensive side of the ball, Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Calais Campbell, B.J. Hill, who's one of the best nose tackles in the National Football League. You look at Patrick Queen, who's still a promising prospect at that position. And then you add in Marcus Williams with Kyle Hamilton. Come on, man. And then even if you don't like B.J. Hill, you can mix in a play like Travis Jones, who you got from UConn, who I think is going to be a star. I think he's going to be one of the best nose guards in the National Football League. Baltimore drafts extremely well. What do you see every single year from the Baltimore Ravens? A+, A+, A+ grades, whether it's PFF, whether it's ESPN, whether it's Sports Nation. Every single sports outlet that you could potentially think of always grades the Baltimore Ravens. Even when Ozzie Newsome retired, done, the Baltimore Ravens still find a way to get the job done throughout the draft and make Baltimore a contender for the last 20 years. But the receiving position has always been a problem. It's always been a detriment. It's always been something that has held them back for decades. And now the fact that the only legitimate option you have is Mark Andrews. Listen, Lamar Jackson is a do-it-all player. He's one of the best pure players in the national, not quarterback, but best pure players in the league. We all know he can throw the football at an efficient level. We all know he's one of the best intermediate throwers in the National Football League. We all know he can run the football. Lamar Jackson is going to rush for at least 800, 900, maybe 1,000 yards if he can stay healthy. He's going to have at least 7 to 8 rushing touchdowns. That rushing attack is going to be top 2, top 3 easily in the National Football League because those guys are 4 to 5 guys deep. But the problem is the receiving game. This is not the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. This is not the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is not the 2015 no-fly zone Denver Broncos or the 2013 Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom. This is 2022. It is rare. And even then, it is extremely rare for a team that heavily relies on their defense and their ground game to carry a team to a championship. It is rare. Even back then, it was rare. So you're going to tell me that Baltimore is going to do that? I'm just not too sure. There's no question in my mind, guys, that Baltimore is going to be a great regular season football team. That's a team that easily can win 12, 13 games easily based off of their head coach with John Harbaugh, great leadership with great management, great ownership, great talent on the defensive side of the ball, including their offensive line having one of the best O-lines in the National Football League. Great quarterback in Lamar Jackson, but no receiving game. And Lamar Jackson is not Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson is not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Tom Brady. He's not a player that can make receivers that much better. Where you look at a player like Aaron Rodgers who can make Scantling a $20 million player, who can make guys $20, $30, $40 million guys. Devontae Adams got paid $100 million to go to Las Vegas. Lamar Jackson's not that type of player. He's a player that I think overall-wise he makes the team better, but you look at the specific positions, he doesn't make them better. And I think that is going to be a big problem by not getting Lamar Jackson the receiving help that he needs. So for me, great regular season team. And let's be honest, the power rankings is all about the regular season. This is what all the power rankings is about. It's predicting the regular season and the postseason. So saying all that, Baltimore, is my number 4 team. Number 3 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yes, guys, Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, he's back. Tom Brady's going to be back. Tom Brady's going to be back with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and Leonard Fournette. And you look at the offensive line, Ryan Jensen's back, and Trishan Wirth, absolute beast at right tackle. And yes, we all know Tampa Bay ensured one of the best lines. They have, I think, around 3 to 4 key starters returning back from their offensive line. You look at the defense. I mean, Cameron Brate, even if Rob Gronkowski doesn't come back, Cameron Brate has proven enough that he could be a steady number 1 tight end in the National Football League. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, Levante David. You look at Vita Vea. You add in a player like Logan Hall on the outside, or you can slide him in the inside because he's more of a 6'6", 270-pound, 60-pound guy. But Houston used him primarily as a 3-technique defensive tackle. But he's a guy that in the NFL is projected to be on the outside. But you know, it's very similar to Joe Tryon, who they kind of had to try to fix him up a little bit. It was more of a project. That's how it'll be for Logan Hall. But still, you add in Logan Hall, Joe Tryon. Then you have, again, Levante David. You look at Devin White, one of the fastest, one of the best inside linebackers in the National Football League. And then Shaquille Barrett, who's a 9 double-digit sack type of guy. He's a guy, worst case scenario, he'll get you 8-9, he'll get you 8-7 sacks. Best case scenario, 14, 15 sacks easily for Shaquille Barrett. He's been a big contributor for Tampa Bay over the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, there's no reason for me to say that he's not going to be that now. Yes, he's a little older, but I think he's pushing the age of 30. We've seen pass rushers still dominate. Shaquille Barrett will be fine, especially with those players. Carlton Davis will lead the outside cornerback position. And obviously, Antoine Winfield Jr. is one of the best safety, one of the most underrated safeties that we can see. What hurt Tampa Bay was that they just kept getting hurt throughout the secondary. Jamal Dean just couldn't really stay healthy a lot too. We'll see. I mean, for the most part, that's probably the only weakness in that team, honestly, is just their secondary. Their secondary is their weakness. So if they can get better there, they're going to be fine. But even then, I mean, you're talking about a unit that's been playing together for over the last 2 to 3 years. They won a Super Bowl together. And to be honest with you, they don't really need to have an elite secondary. They have a great pass rushing unit. They have a great front seven that can stop the run and that can stop the pass and that can rush the quarterback. And when you have a franchise type of quarterback in Tom Brady, when you have the weapons that he's been able to have over his career, there's no question in my mind, guys, that Tampa Bay is going to be an elite team. Not to mention that they're competing in a conference that doesn't really have a lot of elite quarterbacks. They're competing in a division that really doesn't really have a lot of star power. There's no question in my mind, guys, that the Buccaneers is one of the best teams in the National Football League. Like it or hate it, Tom Brady is going to be here at least for another year, competing for potentially a Super Bowl championship. Number 2 for me, guys, is going to be the LA Rams. Yes, the LA Rams for me is going to be number 2, and a big reason why is because they're number 1, they're the returning Super Bowl champions. Number 2 is that I do think they're going to restructure, they're going to get that contract deal for Aaron Donald, because trust me, you don't want Aaron Donald retiring. You don't want Aaron Donald retiring. You don't want that happening. Aaron Donald is arguably the best defensive player in our era. Yes, we've had great players like J.J. Watt, DeMarcus Ware, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Troy Polamalu, guys that were just dominant in the 21st century. And I can keep going on and on. When you look at a guy like Aaron Donald, who at 6'1", 299 pounds, who is quick as a cat, who runs like a 4.6 or 4.5, who for some reason with this body type still looks like he's a 220-pound running back, and the production that he's had and the impact he's had as a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award, a Pro Bowl caliber player ever since he's been in the league, all-pro status, every single honorable mention you can think of he has except for MVP and Super Bowl MVP, you want that player to come back. So yes, I do believe that LA will give him a massive contract that will at least let him stay for the next 45 years, and he'll be dominant and he'll be better, and he'll be crowned the best defensive tackle ever. I already know he's the best defensive tackle ever. I think LA will for sure make that happen. But besides Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey's still there. Leonard Floyd, yes, you don't have Von Miller at the outside pass rushing position, but Leonard Floyd is more than capable of being that guy. And then shout out Roll Tide, Terrell Lewis. I think this is going to be a breakout year for Terrell Lewis, ladies and gentlemen. I do believe that this can be a breakout year for Terrell Lewis. I think he's a guy with the physical traits, the physical intangibles, the talent to play it and to be a massive player. Not saying he's going to get 10, 11 sacks, but I think he'll get around 6, 7 sacks. I think he can. I think they do have some questions throughout their secondary that needs to be addressed. Receiving wise, Robert Woods, how can he bounce back from having an ACL injury? Or I think it was either Achilles and ACL, but how can he bounce back from having a season-ending injury? We all know Cooper Kupp is going to be one of the best receivers in the National Football League. They don't have Odell Beckham Jr. there. You do have Matthew Stafford. You have a pretty good offensive line coming back, right? You also have to add in the fact that you have Cam Akers with Darrell Henderson there as your running back, as your RB1, your RB2s. LA is going to be a great team. They're going to be a great team. The question is that can they repeat as Super Bowl champions? Because there is this Super Bowl curse called the hangover. So there's a big question if can the LA Rams, can they get the job done? It's something that we honestly have to figure out, and it's honestly that we're going to have to see about. But for me personally, guys, I do think that the LA Rams can be a team that's going to be a massive, massive, massive contributor to the National Football League, and honestly a team that can at least make it to the playoffs. The question is which seed can they fill, whether if it's number 2, number 3, number 1. I think those, at least worst case scenario for them, they'll be number 3. Maybe they'll be a wild card team because that NFC West division, not as stacked as they used to be, but obviously with the Arizona Cardinals being there, that's going to be a pretty big thing for them. We'll see. We'll see. But for me, I think the Rams, I got them at number 2. And obviously number 1 is going to be the Buffalo Bills. I think they have the most complete roster in football. I think with the addition with Gabriel Davis being there, obviously with Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in the National Football League, Josh Allen, top 5 quarterback, not top 3 quarterback in the National Football League. You have a much improved offensive line with Roger Saffold and restructuring and re-signing that contract with Ryan Bates at guard, who I think who definitely helped the offensive line that we saw for them last year. OJ Howard, shout out Roll Tide, and also with Dawson Knox, that could be a dangerous 1-2 duo at tight end. You can run some 12-13 personnel with those guys there, but there's no question in my mind, guys, that Dawson Knox, who was a red zone target, he's only going to get better at tight end. He had 10 receiving touchdowns last year for them, and as long as he can stay healthy with Josh Allen throwing the football, I think Dawson Knox is going to be a big contributor for them. Then I also look at the fact, guys, that you look at the defensive side of the ball, and I mean, for the most part, everyone's back. I mean, Tre'Davious White, I mean, there's some questions of whether he can recover from his ACL injury. But if he can, I mean, Tre'Davious White is a top 10 cornerback in this league. Then you look at a guy, of course, with Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. And then you add in Kiara Elam from Florida, who was one of the best cornerbacks in college football, especially from the SEC, more of a man coverage guy. But I think they're going to run a little bit of press zone with Kiara. They're going to try to make him feel as much comfortable as possible. But for the most part, the only question mark for Buffalo has been, at least on the defense side of the ball, is, well, there's 2. Number 1 was, can they get elite? Can they get pass rushers? They've had some decent pass rushers over the years, but they've never really had an elite pass rusher ever since Mario Williams and Marcel Darius and Kyle Williams from the interior. But as far as outside pass rushers, they haven't really had it since Mario Williams. Now you add Von Miller, and he's going to tutor guys like Gregory Rousseau and A.J. Epinesa. And then you add in Shaq Lawson, who was a big contributor for Buffalo back in 2019. Jordan Phillips with, I forgot what his name is escaping me, but you add in the guy from Washington Generals, who obviously I think is going to be a Tim Settle. Tim Settle, who I think when Tim Settle played for Washington, being behind Deron Payne, he was a massive contributor. That's a guy at 3 technique that can be good. Daquan Jones, one of the best one technique players at nose guard in the league. Older side, but it could be a really big player for them. They've really never had a true number 1 ever since Starr. But the problem is that Starr really never ever played. Starr really never even played. But then you look at James. I'm looking for one of the Jamison Crowder at slot. Jamison Crowder, guys, 800 yards, 700 yards, 900 yards. This is what he was averaging with the Jets. And now you're talking about a guy who's one of the best run after the catch slot receivers in the National Football League. Maybe not the route running wizard or the route running expertise like a guy like Cole Beasley was, but you're talking about run after the catch ability, a decent enough route runner where he can be a contributor. Again, if he can average 700, 800 yards as a slot receiver with the New York Jets and with the massive disappointments that they've had at the quarterback position, imagine what we'll have with Josh Allen. So I'm actually excited for that. And then you look at a guy like Khalil Shakir from Boise State, who is more of I'm not going to say a poor man's version of Deebo Samuel, but a very similar player to Deebo Samuel, who you can line him up in the backfield. You can line him up in the slot. He's great after the catch. He has great hands, makes so many spectacular, flashy plays. Buffalo's loaded. they're loaded. I think their offensive line's improved. Their receiving position is improved. Running back wise, to James Cook, Devin Singletary is going to be the #1 guy there, but you can use James Cook as a third down back. You can use him as a receiving back who you can line him up out wide in the slot, another addition to the receiving game. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, you improve the defense. You finally got that superstar edge rusher in Von Miller since Mario Williams. Secondary wise is going to be great. And I forgot to even mention a guy like Tyron Johnson from Tyron Johnson, who is one of the best slots or one of the highest paid slot corners in the National Football League. Buffalo has the most complete roster, in my opinion, in the National Football League. And it's not just coming because I'm a Bills fan. I think if we're objectively looking at it, there's not a lot of teams that have the complete roster from the quarterback position, from the running game, from the receiving game, from the offensive line, from the defensive standpoint, with the coaching staff, with Leslie Frazier, with Sean McDermott. There's just not a lot. There's not a lot, especially when it comes to management and ownership. Not a lot of teams that can compete with that. But those are my top 10 power rankings. And if you guys want to put your power rankings in the comment section, whether once this live stream is over, if you want to put it in the live chat, please let me know what your guys' power rankings is. But that's my top 10 power rankings for that. But now, next thing we got to focus on, guys, is the conference championship recaps, and then we'll kind of just end it off there with our send-off. But before then, take a little break, and we're going to look at the comic session. LW, shout out to LW from Jan Sports, from the Jan Sports channel. Thank you guys so much for coming. Whoever's coming from the Jan Sports YouTube channel, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Really, really appreciate you guys from coming by. Jordan Francis, what's going on? Long time no see, Jordan Francis. Thank you so much for stopping by here. Again, if you guys like Buffalo sports talk, if you guys like NFL talk, college talk, high school recruiting, which we'll definitely touch upon, you want to make sure that you hit the like button. You want to make sure that if you're on the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button. Takes less than 2 seconds. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure to subscribe to Buffalo FAMbase Sports. And if you guys are coming from the Jan Sports channel, definitely do that, because I will be live streaming every Tuesday at 7 p.m. with my co-host, Kari Damos, who unfortunately couldn't make it today, but he'll make it. He'll definitely be here next week, and we'll definitely get the show rolling. Shout out to my boy Chico Buffalo. Chico Buffalo, thank you so much also for stopping by the live stream. Again, thank you so much for the reminding me about Jameson Crowder, because I almost forgot about him. And then obviously shout out San Antonio, Texas, Bills Mafia, representing all over the country and all over the world. But now talking about some conference championship play, because we got to talk about these playoffs. So obviously the Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, we'll talk about that first. What a day. What a day it was with the Boston Celtics beating the Miami Heat 100-96. And I know a lot of people are going to down Jimmy Butler for his three-point play, because that was I thought that was one of the dumbest shot selections we've seen. Even though I can understand why he took it, because if he would have made the shot, that's huge momentum. But you had 15 seconds left on the clock. Jimmy Butler he shoots less than 30% from the field. I don't know what he's shooting from the playoffs, but I know from the regular season he shot less than 30% from the field. I just don't understand why you would pull up from three in that situation. So, but Jimmy Butler, man, you got to drive, maybe look for a mid-look shot, take your time. You don't have to rush it. But still, what a day for the Boston Celtics, because you look at the Celtics organization, ever since the loss of Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo, Kevin Garnett, the Celtics, they kind of had their ups, they had their downs. Obviously, with the addition, with getting Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and a lot of those are key additions, they made it to the playoffs over the last 2 to 3 years, but they just couldn't really get back to final status. And to see a guy like Jason Tatum, who looked up to Kobe Bryant, who a lot of people thought that could be a younger version of Kobe Bryant. Jason Tatum wore that 24 armband around his arm, texted Kobe Bryant, who, again, Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest athletes, one of the greatest spokesperson, one of the greatest contributors and role models that we've ever seen, texted Kobe Bryant, man, long gone. And the fact that Jason Tatum is honoring Kobe Bryant will be proud of Jason Tatum and everything that he's accomplishing. And it's just great to see the Celtics get back to the finals. And now we have an interesting matchup, because I think that if the Heat would have made it, I think the Warriors could have won this series 4-1. But now you're talking about one of the best defensive teams, if not the best defensive team in the National Basketball Association, now competing, honestly, guys, with the Golden State Warriors, who's one of the best 3-point spot up teams in the National Basketball Association. Guys, that's interesting. Guys, that's very, very, very interesting to see what would happen there. So, but talking about the Celtics real quick, Jason Tatum averaging 27 points in this playoffs, averaging over 30 in the conference championship. And then you look at Jaylen Brown, who put up 24 points. Marcus Smart stepped up for them huge on the defensive side of the ball and also on the offensive side of the ball. Grant Williams, Al Horford, who was so emotional, teary-eyed. He's been in the NBA for more than 14, I think close to 15 years. And you saw the emotions and how big he was on the defensive side of the ball as an offensive rebounder, defensive rebounder. You saw Al Horford, how much this meant for him to go to the finals. Absolutely incredible accomplishment. But the Celtics just showed up. It was the big three. It was the combination of Marcus Williams, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. All those guys scored over 20 points. We talk about the biggest moments. Game 7. I mean, Bill Russell said it best. The best moment in all of sports is 2 words. Game 7. That's coming from Bill Russell. And when the top players show up for Game 7, it goes to show you, and it tells you all about a team. And the Celtics have been like this the entire way. These guys, when they lost to LeBron James, when these guys were up 3-1 and they lost, they just couldn't. I'm sorry, these guys were up 3-2. They could have closed it. They could have sealed the deal. But they let LeBron come back. Why? Because LeBron and that Cavs team, they were made for that moment. They were used to finals. They were used to being under the pressure. That Celtics team was way young. Jason Tatum, I think, was only 20, 21 years of age by the time that happened. And now when you look at everything else, that Celtics team 3 years later is now back to the finals. So congratulations to the Boston Celtics. To the Miami Heat, it sucks for them because they made it to the finals a couple seasons ago. They were very close to getting it done against the Los Angeles Lakers, but they just couldn't really seal the deal. They just couldn't really seal the deal there. So the fact of the matter is, guys, is the Lakers can get it. I think the Lakers, for the most part, they were, again, Anthony Davis, LeBron James. They had a great bench with guys like Alex Caruso and Kuzma, and a lot of really other great contributors in that team. Dwight Howard was huge in that playoff season. Rajon Rondo was phenomenal throughout that finals. And even though, that team, Goran Dragic, he pretty much hurt himself, and he's really never been the same player ever since that horrific injury he suffered throughout the playoffs. But Jimmy Butler was the man, and he was the man throughout this series. He scored over 35 points, and a lot of people are not going to talk about. People will. I'll say this. Very similar to how Kevin Durant and the Nets lost last year to the Milwaukee Bucks. People don't talk about Kevin Durant's 48-point performance, how he brought that team back, and he almost had a game winner against Milwaukee to kind of push it. People will always talk about that horrible shot selection that Kevin Durant had when during the buzzer beater in overtime. People will always talk about that instead of talking about that 48-point performance, that one of the best performances I've ever seen Kevin Durant play, how he literally had to carry that Nets team on his back. People will always talk about that horrible shot selection. And unfortunately for Jimmy Butler, who had an incredible game on the defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball as a dual threat was incredible. People will always talk about that horrible shot selection that he had, unfortunately. And that's just the case, guys. That's just the case. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But now talking about the Golden State Warriors, I do think that Golden State, guys, when they played against the Dallas Mavericks, I think we're going to look back 2 to 3 years from now, and I think we're going to sit up here and say, this was a great learning moment from Luka Doncic and a guy that can easily get back to the finals. Luka Doncic, I think a lot of people don't really understand how impressive of a season Luka Doncic had. You're talking about a player that, for the most part, didn't have another star on his team. No, Kristaps Porzingis does not count because he just can't stay healthy. But even then, he only averages 17, 18 points per game. Is that really star status? But Luka Doncic, people don't really talk about how impressive he was. Spencer Dinwiddie, Brunson. I mean, who else did he really have? Who was the top scorer, the next guy in line for when it comes to competing with Luka Doncic? No one. And the fact that Luka Doncic was able to get that team to the NBA to get that team to the conference finals was extremely impressive by his standards. But this has been a problem for the last 2 to 3 years, where it's been Luka and then it's been everyone else. So now, if you're Mark Cuban, if you're part of the management team, how do you get the Mavericks past a team like Golden State, or even future beyond that, like the Phoenix Suns? How do you get past a team like Golden State, who has not one, not two, but 3 stars? How do you get past that? You got to have other complement players, whether if it's on the bench or whether if it's on or other shooters that can surround Luka, or maybe get another superstar that can complement Luka's stats, because it just can't be him. I think what we're learning is that Luka, he's starting to learn how to get other players involved. It just can't be Luka score first and then it's everyone else. He's starting to learn. He's starting to go through that period where he's now starting to enter his prime. I think when we take a lot of people say, well, no, your prime is 26, 27 years, or 28 years of age. Really a prime is when you're really starting to, like, when you really start to figure things out, when you really finally grasp what your play style is and how you can really elevate your game. That's when you're entering your prime. And I think Luka is starting to enter it. He's starting to get there to prime status. So how do you not waste his prime? You got to have other players that can not only complement Luka, but you got to have some other stars that can complement with Luka. And I think that this could be a learning moment. Mark Cuban's not stupid. He's a phenomenal businessman. Great personality, phenomenal businessman. And that's a guy that really understands basketball. He understands the game. He understands what it takes to build rosters. And I think with Cuban and his management team, they'll learn from this, and they'll try to do whatever it takes to find the next star that can play with Luka. Because literally, you add another superstar with Luka, you can make an argument that the Mavericks could have been playing the Warriors even now. Not now, but obviously maybe 2 or 3 days ago, they could have still been playing and potentially be competing for final status. But as far as the Warriors goes, a lot of people were writing them off. Nick Wright, Fox Sports analyst, he came out a couple years ago and he said that the Warriors will never ever reach the finals again. 2 years later, they reached the finals, Nick Wright. And I think I find it extremely funny that when you look at the Golden State Warriors, the loss of Klay Thompson, you can make an argument, helped the Warriors. Because Jordan Poole had to step up. Andrew Wiggins had to step up after being traded from Minnesota. You had other players, Looney. You had other guys besides Stephen Curry and Draymond Green contribute to the team. And I find that extremely impressive. I really do. I mean, Jonathan Kuminga had to step up huge for them last year. Gary Payton II had to step up huge for them. Otto Porter Jr. as a 3-point spot-up shooter had to step up huge for them. You can legit make an argument that last year, Klay Thompson not playing for them was the best thing that could have happened for the Golden State Warriors, because it wasn't just Klay, who's still recovering in my opinion. It wasn't just Draymond. It wasn't just Steph. It was a lot of other players. It was 4 to 5 guys deep from their bench and from their starting position, that key players that had to step up for them. Jordan Poole averaging almost 20. Gary Payton II being huge for them on the defensive side of the ball. Kevin Looney being a big enforcer down low on the post. Other players stepped up for them. Kuminga, so many guys. And this reminds me so much of those 2014, 2015 Warrior teams without Kevin Durant. Because I think when they added Kevin Durant, they sort of lost their identity. They sort of lost their identity as far as, yes, they have 4-star players, but what about their bench? What about their other positional players in case one of those guys goes down? As we saw in that Raptors series, when Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson went down, they didn't have anybody else. It was just Steph Curry and Draymond Green. They didn't have anybody else from the bench. They didn't have anybody else that can step up for them. So the Warriors, with Klay Thompson being hurt and other guys getting that valuable experience and that development for their game, it's helped the Warriors. And now they're at a point now where they are the favorites to win the finals, even over the Celtics. And I like the Celtics. I like Marcus Smart. I like Jaylen Brown. I like Al Horford. I like Jason Tatum. But the Warriors are arguably the deepest team in the National Basketball Association. A combination of star power with depth. And this is a Warriors team that has just been absolutely huge for them, for the NBA, for the National Basketball Association. And now we could be talking about Stephen Curry winning his 4th championship, Klay Thompson winning his 4th championship, Draymond Green winning his 4th championship, even though they should have won 5. They should have had 5 finals by now. But that's for a different discussion. But the 6 finals appearances, guys, incredible. Absolutely incredible. And it's all thanks to having great management, great ownership, Steve Kerr being one of the best coaches and being a first ballot Hall of Fame coach, and just a combination of depth and star power. That's what wins NBA championship, guys. You don't have to have a big 3 and big 4, because as we found out with James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and with Kevin Durant, yes, you can have 3 superstar players, but if you don't have the bench, if you don't have other players that can step up when needed, it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to make it to the finals. And if you get there, you'll get swept, as we found that out. As what we saw from Miami Heat and LeBron James the first time they made it when they faced against the Dallas Mavericks. You know, it just can't be star player. It's other players, other role players, 6-mans, guys that can step up when needed to fill their roles. Those are the guys that will help you win NBA championships, not just star power. The Warriors have a combination of both those things. And that's why, honestly, if I have to make a prediction, I honestly believe, guys, that the Golden State Warriors is going to win the finals. Do I think it'll be 4-1? I don't think it'll be 4-1. Do I think it'll be a sweep? I don't think it'll be a sweep. I think this will be a 4-2 type of series, maybe 4-3, where I think the Celtics have enough defensive power. I think they have enough defensive prowess for them to at least get them at least 2 to 3 games. But I think all in all, the Warriors will win 4 championships. The Warriors will win this series. And I think Stephen Curry, maybe he might not get NBA MVP. It might even go to Jordan Poole, like we saw Andre Iguodala when he got his Finals MVP back during the 2014 to 15 season. But overall wise, guys, I just think the Warriors have everything that they need. They can play defense. They got star power, and they have other players from the role position and 6-man that can step up in the moments where the Warriors truly need them, in case if one of their stars just doesn't have a great game. That's the key, guys. That's the success. That's the formula for winning championships. It's not just about star power. And that's why I have the Warriors beating the Celtics 4 games to 2. But anyway, guys, I'm going to read your comments, and then we'll kind of close it down here a little bit. We're going to end it a little bit short, but that's because, we don't have Kyrie here, a little bit here. Otherwise, we'll probably be on for like another hour. We'll probably be on for like another half an hour. But like I said, guys, if you guys want recruiting, high school recruiting, you want high school sports, you want college, you want NFL, you want basketball. Hell, we can even talk about some Liverpool, right? Some UEFA, right? Liverpool with their fans absolutely going insane. Again, guys, I mean, like 50,000 Liverpool fans could even go in the stadium in Paris because they were just going insane. Absolutely going insane, man. But Real Madrid beating Liverpool 1-0. We can talk baseball. If you want all that, you want to make sure to subscribe to FAMbase Sports on YouTube. If you're listening to us from Facebook and Twitter, also make sure to continue following us. Please continue to follow with us, because we will be here every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And even if we don't, we will definitely let you guys know what's going on. Normally we'll reschedule the next day. But yeah, guys, reading your comments, LW, Jordan Francis, Chico Buffalo, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Crimson Brave, let's see, we got Nabil, Jerry. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. And any other people, again, from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're watching this from, we want to thank you guys so much for stopping by the live stream. But anyway, guys, we're going to close it out here. My name is Jared Call, the host of FAMbase Sports. My co-host, Kari Damos, will be here next week. We'll make sure of that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for stopping by, and we'll catch you guys on the next stream. Peace, guys, and we're out.